If Plato were alive today, he would see Neuralink not as progress, but as chaining the soul to a new kind of cave. And if you know anything about Plato's cave, then you already know. But if not, then, well, that's a story for another day. But the point is that, you know, we should be returning to the realm of forms, to the realm of ideas and, you know, potential, instead of tying ourselves into the material. And that's exactly what's happening with transhumanism and the rest of the world. Transhumanism is rooted in fear of aging, suffering, death. The Stoics saw this as a spiritual weakness. We need to understand that we are a part of nature, that we live in accordance with nature, okay? We are living in this objective reality that we perceive as human beings, okay? That is very important to my philosophy.
It may seem difficult at first, but everything is difficult at first.
How's it going? Welcome back, my wonderful wise ones, to a special video today, something quite different. I need to start making more of these videos because it's something I truly do care about. If you're not aware, I am currently in the works of building up my own philosophical movement and creating my own philosophy. It's currently titled Soulism, and it takes inspiration from the Stoics, Taoism, Plato heavily, and a dualist perspective. And what I aim to do with this philosophy is to basically create a movement, to create a philosophy that brings back virtue into the modern world and allows modern humans to separate themselves from tribal thinking and group mentality and integrate into a united culture and a society that actually functions based on morality and virtue, which sounds like quite a far-fetched dream, but I do believe that without movements like Buddhism, like Stoicism, then, you know, modern day society will just continue to head towards a destructive path. And that's what I want to discuss today. Today I'm talking about transhumanism, the philosophy of transhumanism, and why I believe transhumanism is bad, why transhumanism is the worst philosophy that humanity can have. But currently that is exactly what we're heading towards, a transhumanist future, okay? Futurism, but in the worst possible sense. What might come to mind is media depicting a transhumanist future, such as Cyberpunk 2077, Blade Runner, okay? There's lots of dystopian media covering this type of scenario. Even George Orwell kind of depicted a transhumanist society. Transhumanism supports a technocracy, and that might sound ideal on paper if you've read, you know, philosophies like Ayn Rand, which heavily inspired the game BioShock for all of you gamers out there. But, you know, it might sound like kind of liberating, you know, the idea of a free society where technology can be pushed to the absolute limit without any governance behind it, without any regulation. And I do believe that is where we are heading. That is currently what is happening to modern day society.
And remember, kids, the next time that somebody tells you the government will do that, oh yes they will.
I mean, with artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
So I just thought I needed to give you some context, as there will be more videos like this coming out on my channel. So now let's discuss transhumanism, okay, and why I believe transhumanism is bad for humanity and it is the worst philosophy to have. Now you could say that transhumanism is more of a movement than a philosophy, but there's, ideologies underpinning transhumanism. And today I'm going to, discuss from the perspective of Plato, Socrates, and many other philosophies that will basically show you why transhumanism is bad. But there's no denying it. There's no denying that we are heading towards that. Of course you can still find lovely nature out in the world, but it's more of an underpinning. It's more what actually happened within the culture of our modern day society. And I'm definitely talking about Western society, but it's happening over here in the East as well, especially South Korea. You look at what's happening, it's quite disgusting and quite sad, to be honest. South Korea won't even exist in, like 100 years time as we know it, because people aren't creating babies, okay? And I don't really care about that. I'm not going to have kids, most likely. There's nothing wrong if you don't want to have kids. But there is a fundamental problem as to why people are choosing not to have kids, which goes into transhumanism. You could say that is the cost of living, which is very true. The global economy is in complete crisis. But it goes a lot deeper than that, because we have become atomized. We have become such an individualist world now, where everything is basically interacted with online. That's where we do our, group meetings. That's, what I do. That's where I've created my own community. So it does have benefits, but when everyone is living a digital lifespan, when everyone has become so atomized and individual based without a greater culture uniting people, and that is where we get the tribal mentality from, where people split off into little splinter groups, into little factions. When you look at the huge divide in America now, just based on politics, based on, Trump versus the left, that's a prime example of how people will not even find any middle ground, and you're literally deemed as an enemy if you side with one group or another. And it's become very tribal online. People just are very selfish these days. They only seem to care about their own lives, what benefit them, and society has become this hyper capitalist, production machine where, chasing wealth, chasing fancy brands, working yourself into the grave, and hustling has become, looked at as being a virtue. That is what's looked at as being a virtuous person today, by chasing materialism, by, dedicating your life to some kind of career and all of this kind of stuff. And, it's not all bad, but when you strip it down, when you realize that everything that people chase today has become hollow, that is very destructive. To let go of externals and to only focus on our moral being, that is where we have gone wrong as a society, where everything now has become about me, instead of about the greater good of society, of virtue. We have completely neglected a life of morality. Nothing is moral anymore. Everything is only moral because it benefits other people. It benefits themselves. Virtue signaling is a prime example of how virtue has been completely lost today. And morality only serves its purpose because of laws and regulations, not out of actual decency. And this is where transhumanism takes us. It takes us to this exterior world where we only seek validation and, pleasure. Stoic acceptance. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius argue to accept fate, amor fati, including the difficult aspects of life, okay? Transhumanism refuses nature. It wants to conquer death, optimize emotion, and erase weakness.
With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon.
A transhumanism future may produce powerful beings, but not better humans. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. Quote Marcus Aurelius. Transhumanism, ironically, might make us live longer, but live less. People today will only truly think about themselves. They don't really think about others. They only truly care about what benefits them, okay? Because that is the society we have produced. And philosophy to me is a key reason as to why society has failed. Because we have stopped caring and respecting philosophy. We treat it as a simple academic subject instead of a way of life. And that's exactly how philosophy should be treated. That's how the ancient Greeks, the Romans, all of these great societies before us treated philosophy. But science has killed philosophy. But you can't have accurate science without the philosophical underpinnings of understanding the universe and metaphysics and how things actually fundamentally work within consciousness. So it's become a very biased world now. And even I'm worried about science, because science has also been in danger recently, just based on, dangerous ideologies. We can't even agree on what is a biological male and what is a biological female anymore, which should be pretty obvious from a scientific point of view. So it's very, very dangerous what's happening to society in this modern world. That is something that really deeply concerns me, is just how atomized everyone has become, how tribal everyone has become, with group mentality, with no in-between, conversation, no room for debate, for understanding different perspectives. It's become very hostile online, and people are just living a very lonely existence. And I understand how that works. I don't have many friends. I've probably got like 3 to 4 really close friends, but they all are in different parts of the world. I don't get to see them often. This generation has become very lonely, and people now are so spoiled for choice because the online world allows everything to be in abundance, but without actual any attainability. So it's become a very destructive cycle for modern humans, and I am worried about future generations, the iPad kids, and all of this stuff. You can meme on it, but it is quite destructive. I'm not saying that you need religion in order to live a fulfilling life, but you need to have some meaning. You need to have something more meaningful than material objects, than chasing a paycheck to buy some shit to impress people that you don't even like. That is what most people are doing in today's society. And as someone who does promote individualism, I think it's gone too far. I think we need a culture to unify ourselves with. And this is all in context to say that transhumanism has become the new way forward, okay? As we integrate with technology further and further, as mega corporations become more and more rich while the rest of us get more and more poor because wealth distribution has become completely unstable since like the 60s, and there's more tax breaks now being given to the, techno elite class. When you can literally buy your way into power, which has always been the case, but now it's even more prevalent than ever before, it's just gonna get worse, okay? And I hate to say that, but it is, because these corporations, these monopolies now, like Apple, like Facebook, BlackRock, all of these different corporations that control so much of our political systems, our media, they only get stronger and stronger, and it becomes even more difficult for smaller groups, for smaller companies and everything to start up. Instead of doing things for the show of it, instead of, actually taking pictures of your fucking food or your actual babies to use them as content on Instagram, how about people start actually living their lives? How about people actually start living in the moment instead of looking into the moment through a goddamn screen? That is what this generation has become. Nothing has become about the actual physical nature of reality anymore. It's all just a product that, has to be shipped out, for no reason, even when most of these people don't actually make any money. It's just because everyone has become brainwashed and fantasized by technology, okay? That is what has happened. Transhumanism assumes consciousness can be uploaded, digitized, or enhanced. But dualism, which is my personal philosophy that I align myself with, argues that the mind and the body are fundamentally distinct. The mind is not reducible to neurons or code. Transhumanism treats the brain like software and the body like hardware. replacing the body with tech might sever the conditions that allow consciousness in the first place. This is the idea where we are heading towards. Cyberpunk is a prime example of this kind of future, where basically now what we're getting in the future is probably cybernetics. And that can be good. I'm not saying it's never good, you know, with like people who have disabilities and stuff like that. But when we try and cheat our own nature without going through nature's evolution, we are cheating the universe, we are cheating God. And I'm not a religious man saying, you know, that Jesus is going to send you to hell or something, but I do believe in a greater being that we are all a part of, and we are simply negating the fact that we are separating ourselves further and further from what is, you know, purely our essence, and it's very, very destructive. So what is transhumanism? What is the philosophy of transhumanism? Well, to put it quite simply, transhumanism is the ideology that humans must merge with machine, that must merge with technology in order to transcend to the next step, okay? And in some ways, I think that could be possible, as it's in our nature to innovate. It's in our nature to evolve, okay? That is part of the human condition, but nature always sets limits. And just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should. And when you look at modern day society now, how, you know, people are addicted to their phones, where you see everyone just doom scrolling, where everyone lives a digital lifespan now, and we have become so disconnected from each other and being able to have civilized conversations online or anything like that, it's clear that technocracy, it's clear that transhumanism isn't the answer. We don't want people just going into virtual lives, you know, heading into a virtual world like VR that becomes your normal reality. Now, Plato would argue that transhumanism, and this is my own personal belief, basically brings us into the material, instead of separating us into the immaterial, you know, separating our mind and body. The dualist perspective is simply that the mind is not consciousness, the mind is not the brain in a similar fashion, okay? That we live a dualist existence. Consciousness itself is simply the universe experiencing itself. The ideas that we get come from the metaphysical. We simply manifest them into reality. And if you want to learn more about metaphysics, check out my metaphysical video about metaphysics. But basically, what's happening with transhumanism is the idea that we tie ourselves to the material, okay? So, for example, in the future, no doubt we're going to get tons of Tesla robots, self-driving cars, everything becomes automated. And we're seeing that right now with the rise of AI. AI has become completely out of control, and it's absolutely ruining everything. I absolutely hate it. It really disgusts me. I don't like to talk about it because it gets me rather depressed. But as a creative person, what AI is doing to the world makes me very sad, because it's not automating boring, you know, meaningless tasks where it can. What it's doing is it's replacing creativity, you know, replacing what makes humanity worth living. The ideas that come from humanity, from the soul, are now just being reproduced and copied and pasted. We saw that recently with the whole Ghiblification. As someone who lives in Japan, who knows the struggle of Miyazaki, you know, I've watched many documentaries on how painstakingly it takes him to do his art form. Now people can just replicate his art style without any of the actual meaning behind it, without any of the actual soul, you know, behind it. You can replicate something in pain, something crying, but you can never actually understand the meaning if it's simply replicated. And that's what AI is doing. It's simply automating all of creativity, music, you know, fiction, even advertisements. Coca-Cola did an AI advertisement, which is absolutely disgusting. It's putting people who actually innovate and keep the spark of humanity alive by, you know, getting the metaphysical ideas and manifesting them into something creative. in order to keep us all, in line with each other. That's where storytelling comes from. That's where fiction comes from. That's why it means so much to us. And if that all gets replaced by a machine, an AI algorithm, then we are truly lost. But that's another aspect of transhumanism. We slowly will merge with AI. That's exactly what Elon Musk wants. Neuralink is proposing eventually to have some kind of AI implemented into our very consciousness, so we can simply learn a skill without any of the actual work necessary. It takes away all of the humanity aspect from humanity. It simply just becomes then an automated process. Transhumanism is the pinnacle of human innovation, but Taoism promotes harmony through non-intervention, Wu Wei. The Tao Te Ching emphasizes living in accordance with nature, not dominating or controlling it. Transhumanism tries to optimize, to correct, to control, even death itself. This is not in line with the Tao. The Taoist sage accepts life and death as a flowing state. We are only in a transient state of existence. Everything is in a constant flux of now. And trying to replicate life itself, it doesn't become life anymore. It becomes, a hologram, an illusion. And that's exactly what transhumanism is heading towards. By consuming constant products, by being a good little consumer, by losing ourselves in tribal thinking, by aligning with one side without thinking for ourselves, without examining ideas. We have so much potential thanks to technology, for education, for a better life. But do we use it? No, we use it to argue about shit that doesn't matter on Twitter. That is exactly what's happening with the world around us today. We have to understand that as humans, we are living a dualist life. We are part of the immaterial and the material. The post-human might be smarter, faster, immortal, but it may no longer be human in any meaningful sense. Is that really what we want to head towards? Where we are completely disconnected from the world around us and from each other? Because that's exactly where we're heading. Thanks for watching. Now, I do hope you enjoyed that video about transhumanism philosophy and why I believe transhumanism to be the most dangerous philosophy for humanity, a dangerous ideology, but sadly one that humanity is pursuing at a rapid cost. And we can look around us today and we can see it, thanks to social media, thanks to the rapid development of AI, without any, safeguards, without any kind of thinking about the future. We are just rapidly pushing forwards with AI, deepfake technology, all of this stuff. For the first time in human history now, we actually have to question what is reality. Fundamentally, when we see something online, we can't actually say if it's real or not, because technology has simply started to replace reality. And this is dangerous for humanity. And that's why I wanted to discuss the philosophy of transhumanism, and I aim to fight it with my movement of solism. So do subscribe if you are interested in this type of thing, as it is the most important discussion, the most important subject, I believe, in, for humanity and for future humanity as well, because I really don't like where things are heading. So please be open-minded, respect one another, and be present within reality itself. I know it's difficult. I struggle with it myself, and I've got, anxiety disorders that keep me from, accepting. But understand that this is all part of the human condition, and you just need to let go of externals and learn, educate, and, push forward. Be your better self. Don't be like the rest of the people. Don't fall into the idea that transhumanism can save you, okay? Don't be a part of slave morality. That is something that Nietzsche talked about. And that's exactly where society is right now. Everyone has fallen into slave morality. Everyone is trying to pull each other down instead of raising people up. So I do hope this video reaches some people. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.
It may seem difficult at first, but difficult at first. You may abandon your own body, but you must preserve your honor.